have you recently purchased a long skirt or maybe a new lipstick? Or if you're a guy, maybe cargo shorts have been a new addition into your wardrobe. Well, if that's the case, chances are that's a sign that you are actually broke. Not to be rude or anything, but we all know that there's a crazy huge inflation happening right now. Prices are skyrocketing and it reflects on our lifestyles and so in our fashion as well. For example, have you heard about the hemline index?
The hemline index is trending right now, especially for big fashion brands. When the economy is high, usually we see a trend of miniskirts. But with the recession that we've been seeing recently, with all the tariffs and the imports and all of that complicated part, we've been seeing that there are trends of longer skirts all the way up to your ankles, covering your shoes. Those are much more trending because it's so much easier for factories or companies to produce them because less fabric, it's minimal, less complications as well. But I don't think it's just for fashion, Leva. What else do you think it?
Actually, yeah, it spreads out even to accessories. For example, have you heard about the lipstick effect? Well, it is a sign that when there's a recession or there's huge inflation, that people are purchasing more lipstick. So their sales go up, of course, and it's because it gives you like this sign of quiet luxury, because it's just an affordable, everyday item that can give you a more put-together look. Exactly. Basically, you're trying to look good, but on a budget, right?
Exactly, and I've definitely had experiences where just one small bottle of lipstick already put so much happiness into me that I thought it's a small type of luxury that without breaking the bank, it instantly made you happier.
Yeah, even though we don't gender discriminate, for guys, it's also luxuries like changing the patterns and the materials of ties, or having scarves now, and also cargo shorts.
Cargo shorts, the trend of carpenter pants, where workwear from previous centuries, which were just for workwear, are now just everyday clothes because they're trendy or they're more practical to carry around.
It's kind of like a two-in-one. Exactly. But the thing is, these are really well-known theories throughout the whole of history, especially since the last decade.
Of course.
But they didn't have social media. We do. And now with social media, I feel like I'm starting to see lots of new trends popping up.
True.
Could you give me an example, maybe? Have you noticed this as well?
Absolutely. There's a bunch of them now on social media. There's the idea of de-influencing, where influencers de-influence you from buying certain products, thinking that this certain product that they're promoting is much more long-lasting, timeless, and much more worth your money rather than products where they don't actually do anything for you or won't even last that long.
Exactly.
Or the idea of Project Pan, where you have to make use of all the product in the cosmetics, whether it's a blush, whether it's a concealer or a lipstick, and I've personally have been trying to use Project Pan.
Definitely a Project Pan participant.
Exactly.
When you're a student, I feel like every day is Project Pan day.
You have to make sure you get your money's worth.
Exactly. And also we've seen the rise of minimalism. Okay, minimalism has been going around, but now it has been evolving into this quiet luxury, like aesthetic, how it's neutral colors, not too much going on. Not too many accessories, because for accessories you need to buy them a lot, right?
But if you think about it, minimalism could be sort of companies promoting this sort of idea of less colorful fabrics are actually a trend right now, when actually it probably costs a lot more to do all these intricate designs or all these flashy type of clothing or fabrics.
Kind of like less is more.
Exactly.
And it's also a pattern with the concept of dupes, where people are finding similar, let's take for example, lipstick shades. So they find a similar color that costs €5 instead of €25. And even though dupes have been around for a long time as well, now it feels like it's going stronger than ever, you know? And it definitely is kind of fueling business for the more affordable companies.
I feel like that also affects high-end brands in a way, because they can put themselves as either the high quality that will last long, or it can also hurt them in the way that these smaller companies or those companies who can afford to make these products cheaper can profit even more because so much more consumers in times of recession will actually buy their products.
Exactly, and because of it, companies now, especially the high-end ones, need to change their marketing, their strategy, and how they approach the customer. Because at the end of the day, companies always want to please the customer. We are the ones who are dictating what we want, and that's what the companies are for, to give us what we want. And of course, they want to maximize the profit.
Exactly. And they can never admit that there's something bad going on with the economy or what the struggles people are going through. So now they have to sort of market it or frame it, if we can say, in a different way for the people to find it more affordable.
And we had lots of questions about how recession comes into play into marketing. That's why we interviewed Professor Tibor Farkas.
We wanted to ask his professional opinion with his expertise and background on how companies are marketing their products nowadays, especially that we can't really afford much. For today, we have Professor Tibor Farkas, who teaches international marketing and social media and digital marketing as well here at the Corvinus, and we've asked for his sort of expertise to let us be more informed about the business and economic or marketing side of media and recession, how they correlate together.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invite.
We wanted to ask you, since now everyone knows that it is inflation, prices are increasing, and so is the global market adapting, and so do the trends. And in your opinion, how are global brands adapting their messaging during this some sort of recession, but without actually admitting that there is one?
Yes, it's not good to admit that there's a recession. That's a negative message, so they try to avoid that. The majority of the brands, as you can experience, try to avoid addressing anything negative, including recession. So what they do is actually more about distribution, more about price, more about other elements of marketing, the elements of marketing mix that can have an effect on the consumers. So basically, it's the consumer's response what defines what the brands do.
And sort of like the dollar meals or those sort of happy meals that I'm assuming fast food chains promote, do they somewhat sort of...
Yes, they have to. Okay. So in that sense, you probably seen in one of my classes, I've shown you that during the 2008 financial crisis, a new product arrived called Soup for Sluts, which was the cheapest available product. But you see, it splits the market. For those who are really struggling and have no other option but to buy the dollar meals, and those who they don't really care about that, and that's actually splitting by the product and splitting by the target groups.
Right. And especially since, you know, in the recession, people's main priority is saving as much money as possible. Do you think emotional branding or some sort of like social proof or the value an item brings is still valuable, or do you think a lot of it comes down to the price during these times?
It's already a common sense in marketing that every decision is emotional based. So even when we are talking about price, that has an effect on our emotions. So whether we like it or not, whether we have nostalgic feelings about a brand that, when I was a kid, I ate a lot of Happy Meals or whatever, and then obviously they play strongly on these feelings. So emotional branding will always stay on. During the hard times, whether they play around with the product and the price, they cannot play only with the price, so it comes with the product. So they are reducing product features to fit into that, because there's a product price floor. You cannot go below the actual cost of the product unless you have other strategic objectives like gaining market share or entering to a market with a new product or something like that. But other than that, you cannot go below that. So that's some kind of compromise basically in product quality and the pricing options.
Since this playing on emotion is pretty much timeless, that would be the case as well in the last recession. But now, in this recession, we have a new key player that I think is also really important in digital marketing, which is the algorithm. And do you think that the algorithm is now the main influencer and variable in this question, or are the marketers still mostly in control?
I think the marketing managers are still in control. They are in control, but control basically means making decisions. But the decisions are more based on data, and that's where algorithm comes in. Previously, marketing managers were accused that you're just making decisions, not really knowing what to do, spending money, and we don't really see the results. It's just based on guts and feelings and stuff like that. But now, due to marketing analytics, it's a real science with real numbers, where we see what we do, how it affects visitors, so conversion, purchase, spent amount. So basically, the algorithms will help us to figure out what's going on. So what we spend, how affects the market. Just imagine when a company runs an advertising during Super Bowl, millions of dollars, roughly $10 million for including the production and the artists and everything, and the media cost, $10 million for a 30-second commercial. Now, how can you justify that spending with real change in the consumer behavior? It's very hard. It's still not 100% covered. But in online, when you have Google Analytics, when you have insight for social media, then you can measure basically everything. Whatever you do, how it affects the market.
Mm-hmm. So basically, it's more like a tool to use.
Exactly. But the decision is still up to the marketing manager, because even so, I said that we have all the data. Yes, we have all the data, but if you do an online advertising and you see that people are buying your product online, it doesn't mean that that was the absolute influencer element. It might be the final straw. It might be the final push to buy the product. Maybe that person has seen it at the friend's house, on a billboard, in a TV advertising, and finally when he sees that the online advertising, clicked and bought it in the web shop. But it doesn't mean that, oh, we have to spend all the money in the web shop. So even with all this data, there are still uncertainties, and the marketing managers have to interpret this data.
As you said, a lot of big brands are aware of the economic fear or idea of people, wanting to save as much money as possible. Do you think that big brands either sort of use this to their advantage, or do you think they would rather cater to those who are already struggling? Would it be sort of like sort of like a moral or ethical thing to be?
If we check out what are the objectives of a company, the number one thing is to create profit. That's the first thing. Then, if we can, we'll keep the law, so the legal obligations, and ethical obligation comes only after that. So if we are profitable and legal, and then we start thinking about, that's how companies work, that's how my clients work. So, but talking about the recession, there's an indicator of recession in consumer behavior, and I don't know if you've heard about the lipstick effect.
Yes.
Have you heard about the lipstick effect? So basically, even before official crisis, there is a change in consumer buying behavior, like buying more lipstick instead of very expensive stuff. That's true for the food as well. So when people are buying more chocolate during the recession, because that's a piece of happiness, that's a piece of self-indulgence. Ice cream works the same way. So we learn from Hollywood movies that if a girl or a guy gets dumped, then the first thing that they eat a lot of ice cream. So it works the same way.
Thank you so much again, Professor Tibor Farkas, for answering our burning questions. And as he even mentioned that, companies really do not want to admit that there is a recession. They just make it appear, and they frame it in a different way. He also mentioned the lipstick effect and the small signs of luxury, and how it really does tie in together. Because we can see that from a marketing perspective, the companies are aware of these things.
They just can never admit it out loud, so they have to sort of make it in a way that we still see their items valuable, despite it might not be the best price or it might not be in our budget, but they have to make it so appealing to us that we still have this urge to consume it or pay for it.
Exactly, and he mentioned emotional proof, emotional value is thing that brings the consumer to buy something. That is the main takeaway. And in times of recession, when people are stressed and worried about the price, that's where they really want to target those emotions on you, right?
And there's also the idea of being loyal to a brand. They still have to consider their customers if they can still afford it. So they'll have to change it up a little bit, see what new products they can come up with, or if they'll even be able to afford a price change.
Exactly. And nowadays that we have the algorithm, which literally customizes everything for you and can customize ads for you, we kind of see that it is a really huge variable into the marketing equation, as the professor already mentioned. We also know that social media, what is that? The biggest platform for marketing, right?
That's where they get all of their customers, especially if you're a TikTok user. Companies have been utilizing TikTok Shop, which causes even more consumerism around people because it's just a few clicks away and you have a new product.
That's why I feel like we see these trends specifically coming on TikTok, because everything that we mentioned, de-influencing, project pad, where did it, of course they're not like completely brand new terms, but
because of TikTok, the discussion is so much bigger and easier to find.
And that's where they originated from, that's how they go viral. And that's why we're talking about this today, because we probably saw that on TikTok as well, you know? And not only is social media usable for marketing, at the end of the day, it is a digital communication platform. What do? There we communicate, of course.
We have discussions, people share their stories, their collective struggles, and especially in times of economic recessions, it's so much easier for our generation to talk about these type of problems because we show real-time experiences, real-time stories of what we buy, what we consume, what we think is not worth our money anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And the amount of memes and videos I have seen about how the prices are insane, and even this little term that I was like thinking like a part of like a meme or something that says like in this economy. So it kind of shows that we are aware of how the situation is like really not that good at the moment.
Especially for our generation, we're so much more aware of like we can't even afford to buy a house these days. So of course we indulge in small luxuries we can afford, whether it's eating out, a small piece of clothing, lipsticks even, or chocolate, which has been
or just a latte with a pastry. That is the everyday luxury, you know?
The small items that will bring us some sort of joy.
Yes, and the thing about our generation is how we communicate about these issues. We usually just take it through like a joke, hence the memes that we have mentioned.
Our generation is sort of rewriting of how we tell collective stories.
Exactly, and it is the basis of some sort of communication, which kind of got me and you as well into thinking, since it is a digital communication platform, can the communication theories that we learned in the first year, can they apply?
Yeah, because these communication theories have been around for decades or years, and back then social media wasn't a big thing, so it more you had to see it in person to actually understand it. But now we have the digital platform, and it's so much easier to analyze just how far of a reach social media can do.
Yeah, even though it is a completely new thing, at the end of the day, some things are just history cycles and part of human nature, events repeating itself. So that's why we wanted to know why these theories that have been created in the last decade, can they still apply, you know? That's why we interviewed Professor and PhD, Mrs. Alexandra Knight-Benny. We have a really special guest with us today. It's Assistant Professor and PhD, Mrs. Alexandra Knight-Benny. Thank you so much for being here. And since she is the one who taught all of us communications and media students the basis of the realm of communication, all the theories and media effects, we wanted to ask her professional opinion today.
So for this podcast, we're going to be mentioning a bunch of theories, and I think you're the perfect person to help us define this. Hopefully. And, you know, we're specifying on social media in this digital age, especially now that everyone uses their phones all the time. Do you think the media theories that, you know, we've learned in class, which is typically more of like, I wouldn't say old school, but, you know, more of those movements together without the digital age, you think they can still apply today, or like, do you have any examples where they could?
Yeah, in fact, I think they not only apply but are quite essential in understanding digital communication as well, not only something that is understandable in traditional terms. So, to give a few examples or to look at some more practical cases, we can think about uses and gratification theory, which helps us define and understand why people seek out different types of media content also in the social media world. Is it for information seeking? Is it for entertainment purposes? Or do I just want to find like minded people? So, uses and gratification theory, for instance, I think is one that we can easily apply to social media. Or let's look for other examples, agenda setting theory. In the social media environment, I believe that we could call influencers or even viral content, as something that sets the agenda and sets what people are talking about. If you think about that, yeah. So, for instance, these two, but I think we can mention even theories that you might even find to be more old school than these
Okay.
ones, such as symbolic interactionism. If you remember that
Mhm.
from George Herbert Mead, which can help us understand how people construct their identities in social media through different memes, images, profiles, and even comments. So I think that even though the speed and the form of communication has changed and is changing a lot, these ideas and the dynamics are still rooted in classic theory.
And since you mentioned that some of the trends can be part of the agenda setting theory or content creators, could this be applied when there's a report of news that are related to economical issues or financial recession?
Definitely. I think that not only the ones that we have already mentioned, but let's drop in some extra theories as well, if you don't mind. So, framing theory, if you remember, the way we make sense of ideas is very much dependent on how it is framed. If we take let's say, an economic issue or news about an economic issue, it might be the case that it is framed through the lens of individual failure as a fault of one person or something that is stemming from one person, but it might be rather framed as a systematic issue that we as a society should be dealing with or should be maybe even worried about. And the way that these ideas, let it be connected to economic issues or other issues, are framed very much defines how people react to news, how people perceive policies, people, government, and so on and so forth. So I think, for example, here we can mention framing theory, but also spiral of silence. If you remember, let's say that you have an unpopular view on something economic, and you maybe are afraid to share that perceivingly unpopular view because it is your perception that it is unpopular. So you decide to keep silent because you're afraid of backlash. Then we would be able to connect spiral of silence here as well. Or if we look at the platforms such as TikTok and X and see how the news spread, we could also understand this in the framework of diffusion of innovations, especially considering the peer-to-peer interactions.
And there are actually interactions where some influencers, as you said, because of the backlash that they're going to receive, they tend to not share as much as they would want to, or they sort of, again, they frame a certain story to make it a little less controversial than it should be. Even in an economic environment, they don't show their lavish lifestyles too much because they would get backlash thinking that they're bragging, that they seem ungrateful, but then they just show their audience what they actually want to know.
Exactly. And since content creators have been around for a little bit longer, they have kind of managed to set an image of themselves. So I guess they are also framing themselves for it.
Yeah.
But now that as social media is developing, we have a new, not necessarily a new term, but pretty modern and a buzzword, which is an algorithm, which is pretty much the case for most apps like TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts as well. And since algorithm is really customized, everything is specifically adjusted to one's needs. Wanted to know what would you think? Could maybe algorithm like itself could be the new variable in a new and modern cultivation theory?
I like this idea a lot, and I wonder what George Gardner would think about this actually, because I think he was not against actually taking the idea further on. And I was thinking a lot about this question, and I think that in many ways it is applicable if we consider an algorithm to be sort of an invisible programmer, let's call it that, something that curates repeated exposure to certain values, ideologies, lifestyles, and so on. So if we consider it like that, I think we can understand it in terms of cultivation, meaning that it does cultivate certain beliefs and it does it in a repeated manner over time, which might these days seem to, let's say, normalize phenomena such as the hustle culture or doom scrolling or maybe even beauty standards. But we have to understand that cultivation theory was originally developed for television viewing, more specifically heightened exposure to television content, which then Gerber and his colleagues found that it very much affected how people viewed the world and their sense of reality. And the social media and the digital environment is interactive. It's much more personalized, as you mentioned. So in that sense, we do see that this nature of social media challenges this original linear idea of television watching. However, I think that the cumulated effect of the theory and its potential effect on shaping our worldview is definitely there. So in this case, I think that the main idea, as well as what cultivation theorists warned us about, is there in social media as well.
So it should be taken more like a little bit of warning sign. And in maybe a couple of years, we can do research on the new cultivation theory.
I think so. You're completely right. You should do that.
And I feel like with the power of social media now, as you said, it's very personalized. Would you say, like, somewhat to an extent at least, the algorithm could be an opinion leader?
I think so, and I wanted to mention that I think the algorithm is something that is a bit universal. It can fit into many different theoretical perspectives, such as agenda setting theory, maybe even as a gatekeeper. We can think about the algorithm like that. And yes, as you mentioned, maybe a sort of an opinion leader, which is very interesting because it is making this original idea very depersonalized, even though the algorithm is offering personalized content. But if you think about the personification of an algorithm, it's quite interesting. So that's, I think, an interesting paradox.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for your answers. We were really needed an expert's opinion on this. So
As we discussed with a professor, she framed theories that we learned in the first semester, such as the framing theory, the spiral of silence, or even the cultivation theory, showing that these trends are so much more seen, especially with social media. Because again, our generation likes to share everything in social media. It's so much easier
sometimes
to communicate.
Definitely overshare. I've seen
That's
things that I don't want to.
Exactly. We've been utilizing it to all aspects of our lives, and especially with what we consume nowadays.
Exactly. And this just goes on to show that some things, no matter the platform, are really timeless. And we kind of have inspiration now to find, to develop a new cultivation theory. Because even though it was originally for TV, who watches TV that often?
Not nowadays. Everyone has their phone in their hands 24/7, no matter where you are in the world.
Even though if it is like an actual TV, it's not the television itself. It's usually just like Netflix or YouTube, which at the end of the day is kind of far away from that television concept. So we are seeing kind of a shift, definitely. And I feel like that in the future, there will be definitely stuff to research about this. Maybe we could be the ones who are doing it. You never know after we
We'll
finish
create
this
a new
course.
theory out of this research.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to have a new one. But at the end of the day, social media has made it easier for people to communicate their economic struggles, you know?
a sense of we-ness according to Robert Cialdini's sort of principles.
Exactly. And we are kind of like a collective struggle. We're all in this together.
Exactly, especially with our generation, we all understand that we can't afford not too much right now, not anything, but not too much as we would like. So we like to share or sort of create trends out of it too. That the thrifting culture has boomed so much nowadays, and especially during times of COVID, people were promoting thrifting as a sort of way to be more environmentally friendly, finding pieces that were still worth using despite it being cheap. Like they sort of framed thrifting as a good idea rather than probably before people would think, why would you use?
Down
Yeah,
upon it,
exactly.
like it's only for poor people. And that's one thing I really wanted to mention is that lots of these trends are framed as being environmentally friendly, not giving into overconsumption, taking care of the planet, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle, which is true for the most part. Like lots of these trends are actually like really good ideas, and I participate in them myself.
Exactly. And our generation, it just shows that we're so much more aware of these type of struggles, that it's actually a priority in what we consume and buy nowadays.
Exactly.
And it also sort of shows us what we value, or the items, like how much are they really worth to us.
Exactly. And also maybe because we experience the increasing heat every single summer, and it's not easy to survive.
Exactly.
But when we talk about our personal experience, in my opinion, these trends, I like the project pan.
I like the idea of it, yeah.
Yes, thrifting for sure. And I also feel like COVID, no one wants to talk about what happened and how it affected us. But I feel like in the future we will see
just how much of an impact
because
it had.
that's when the economy completely changed. And I remember, especially in my country, after COVID, and then the second turning point for the economy was the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It affected the gas prices and electricity prices so much. It was genuinely insane, and it was crazy to survive with only one job, especially if you're not that well off.
Exactly.
So I feel like now the situation has stabilized a little bit, but definitely these variables like a pandemic, a recession, are definitely affecting us in our fashion and our daily consumerism choices for sure. And
with the post-pandemic, everyone was so excited to go around, shop, be out, and spend so much of their money to buy all of these things that slowly the quality of these items started to go down, or the value of them. Especially now, if you go into stores, you can buy like H&M. Back then, they had high quality pieces.
now
You can
it's
still find
3
something.
washes and you can throw it
Exactly.
out. And especially with the pandemic, when everything was online to
People-
deliver, the
exactly.
Shane trend. So it was
The large boxes of hauls
crazy.
of like $500 boxes, that items you probably won't ever wear again.
Exactly. That's why I'm thankful that we have the minimalism concept now,
Exactly.
the timeless wardrobe,
pieces,
capsule
yeah.
wardrobe, and I definitely support that.
Right.
But I think we should keep an eye out, and these trends should definitely be brought up of how they actually are. That the hemline index should be more talked about.
Exactly.
The lipstick
effect, the
Exactly.
chocolate, and I feel like it also should show like the older generations that a social media platform can be taken seriously. It can be a platform for these types of crisis, like an economic crisis. It can be a crisis communication platform, just to show that there are other ways of reporting these social problems without having to, explaining it easily for normal everyday people, because I don't think everyone can understand an economic report and how it's going to affect them.
Yeah, exactly.
But with these trends, people
you
get
raise
to
a new
explain it.
perspective.
Exactly.
And before that, you were only pretty much in your neighborhood or in your workplace. There you discuss, but kind of everyone's there on kind of the same level. And now, if you are really well off, you can see a perspective from someone who's not. You know.
Exactly. You get to share so much of your story, or even social media can share economic perspectives from different countries, helping understand like the value of clothing, especially since a large number of clothes are made in China or in
Especially
Asian
with all the
countries.
tariffs, and also on a TikTok trend, how they're
Yeah.
supporting these China shops.
Exactly.
Just goes to show that those prices are really affecting
Yeah.
people. You know.
So people want their value or their worth of money to actually be worth spending on, because they don't want to support brands that are overpricing items they can
Exactly.
easily find somewhere else.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it all just dates back to the algorithm because there is a reason why these videos went so viral at this one certain point. It was really pushing it to a lot of people. Okay, you can argue maybe the Chinese government is behind that, but that's the completely different podcast. But yeah, people really were looking for something like that, and it kept pushing it for them, you know.
Especially the dupe culture of luxury items, handbags, clothes, or even perfumes. Like, if you see now, Zara has produced so much perfumes,
Yes.
and all those TikTok influencers showing, oh, this
The
Zara
dupes.
perfume smells exactly like an expensive Baccarat Rouge or something like that.
exactly.
And people find it so much more worth their money, and it's more affordable to the common people to sort of make them feel like they also have some sort of luxury that they can afford.
Yeah, exactly. And pretty much the algorithm knows. The algorithm knows that we are broke. Yeah. Unfortunately, it is the way it is, especially as students. It is not easy being on your own, especially for us as international ones. Really have to check where our money is going and not to participate in another overconsumption trend. So if you see me in a long skirt, purchasing new lipsticks, having a minimalist style, mind your own business. It's not me, it's the economy.
And it's a collective struggle, so we're all going it through together. You're not alone in it.
Exactly. So thank you so much to Professor Mrs. Nad Beni and Professor Tibor Farkas for answering our questions.
And thank you for listening to our podcast today about how basically the algorithm knows we're broke. So
So next time you're on TikTok and you see one of these trends, remember this podcast.